Thank you, Mr. Vickers, for calling me. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I want to thank Mikey for being here today and for all the hard work he's done getting to the point where we're having a debate here. And I know it takes a lot of campaigning to get as many people involved in a petition as you have done, so that's a fantastic tribute to you. I'd also like to thank the member for Lichfield for bringing this debate forward. And I was struck by one thing, comment he said was it's that speech therapy, it's not just a treatment, but it's a lifeline. And that was certainly brought home to me recently in Winchester. Last year I visited an aphasia support group, and someone called Jez Hodgkinson, who's part of that. There's a group of people who meet every couple of weeks, and they've all got speech issues caused by various types of brain damage, sometimes caused by brain injury, caused by strokes, caused by brain tumours, and dementia. And they were telling me that aphasia affects about 350,000 people in the UK. And Jez Hodgkinson said to me, he said, learning to live with aphasia takes hard work, luck, and lots of support. And this isn't helped by the lack of knowledge of the condition. I'd never actually heard of aphasia until I'd had a stroke, so hence it was important to share our stories, both inside our group and with the wider public, including those with a voice in Parliament. And certainly, my personal experience of living with my father, who had a series of mini strokes, then had dementia, and really, really did struggle to communicate. He knew what words he wanted to say, but he couldn't reach for them, and it made communication very, very difficult, especially for a very independent farmer who had quite a hot temper at the best of times. So it didn't help. But all people who have difficulty communicating, whether it's a result of a hearing impairment or special educational needs or conditions like strokes and Parkinson's, they all have the right to participate in society fully and independently. And too often these rights are not fully recognised. And everyone here has talked about how fundamental it is for us to be able to communicate, because we are a social species. We function because we can communicate. But even with my veterinary background, we understand how fundamental this need is, because with puppies who have had their ears cut off or their tails docked, they communicate primarily by body language. And when they lose that ability to communicate, they then cannot socialise, they get psychological issues, they get behavioural problems that last for their entire life. And how much more important is it for humans who need to better communicate with friends and family, and also to be able to access services or interact with strangers on a regular basis, to be able to work and also get a whole education. Because everyone deserves independence and the opportunity to flourish with them and their families supported, so they can express themselves and communicate with ease in a way that is most comfortable to them. So speech and language therapy can make a life-changing difference to the people it supports. It is a vital and overstretched service. We know that in recent years demand has risen at a faster rate than the increase in the number of therapists or the support they can offer, and this desperately does need to be addressed. Because by improving outcomes, speech and language therapy can help deliver better care and actually save money for other parts of the NHS. We heard before about supporting people unable to swallow properly. That can have a significant impact on reducing repeat chest infections. And certainly the member for Leicester was talking about how for every £1 spent on speech therapy, it can save £2.30 on NHS costs, which is when people ask how can we afford to do this, we have to ask how can we afford not to do this. So children and adults alike, they're waiting far too long for speech and language therapy they need. And as the member for Lichfield has already discussed, it is a postcode lottery. There's huge differences in outcomes depending on where you live. And helping people to swallow, eat and communicate is an essential service. And everyone should be able to expect this support if and when they need it. Now, Liberal Democrats, we're pressing for the NHS 10-year plan to address specifically the inadequate access to these speech and language therapies and how it will be improved. We want the government to develop a workforce strategy to end the chronic shortage of speech and language therapists, so everyone can get the support that they need. And on a slight aside but related note, we've also long campaigned for more support for those communicating through British Sign Language. We've campaigned for British Sign Language to have equal official status to the UK's other languages, and we're campaigning to provide free access to sign language lessons for parents and guardians for children who are for parents of deaf children. And I was visiting St Peter's Primary School in Winchester recently, and the head teacher was discussing how since the COVID pandemic, they've noticed that there's been a sharp rise in pupils who are struggling to communicate, and their speech and language hasn't developed as quickly as it did before the pandemic. And we need to remember that it's not just people's educational needs that gets affected both by COVID and by speech and language challenges, but it's also their entire social development and their friendship groups as well. So this is something that we're really pleased that you've managed to highlight, and we're really, really pleased to have this debate here today. And I really urge the Minister that we can push forward on this issue as fast as possible.